So I'm going to get the obvious question out of the way first, because fans love to hate things before they ever see them.
Yes.
So what has reception been like since you've got the first episode out?
You know what? It's been great, and I'm really happy. We're all really happy about that because, yeah, they do tend to, anything new, they're going to hate, and if something changes, and I understand that. Look, my daughter watches the Fresh Beat Band, and they changed Marina in the third season, and, you know, it took a little for her to get used to that. But so I think it takes people to get over it. But it's been great, quite honestly. Unlike my partner, Glenn, I read every review I can find, and I read every posting I can find on every website that I can find. So I read everything, just to see what people are thinking, because I'm a masochist. And for the most part, I'd say 80% has been very, very positive. And I read all the second episode was aired yesterday, and it's even more positive. People like the second episode better than the first episode, because our goal with the first episode was we got to get over that hump and convince people that, hey, we're not going to destroy this world and we're going to pay homage to these characters. Get them to like it enough to come back for the second episode, which apparently they did, and like it even more. So, you know, I think if people hang in there, they're going to see that we're not, you know, doing anything insane with these characters that they love. We're simply showing different aspects of their personalities that we wanted to play with, because we'll never be able to compete with the ghost of Bruce Timm's original show, which everybody, by the way, brings up on the blogs. Says, how could they? Anthony Ruivavar will never be able to compete with Kevin Conroy, who's the greatest Batman voice of all time. No one is disputing that. We just wanted, hey, this is a different take. It's a different permutation of it, and I think you guys will see if you watch a couple episodes, you'll really like it. It's fun.
Good, and new is good. Change is good. And speaking of, the animation style for this is pretty different than anything we've seen before. What made you decide to go that route with Beware the Batman?
Well, when we started working on this show, which for me was about 3 years ago, CGI was where everybody wanted to go. And, what you discover, this is the second CGI show I've worked on. CGI looks awesome. It's very time-consuming, and it's much harder than 2D. And the reason it's much harder than 2D is because you're dealing with three-dimensional objects. You're dealing with three-dimensional things. So, for example, say a storyboard artist boards a scene where, hey, we're going to go to this restaurant. The only backgrounds you're going to need to see are the ones that are shown in the panel. But when you're in 2D, but when you're dealing with CG, you have to build that restaurant. You have to build it, and that takes a lot of time. I think it took them 6 or 7 months just to build Gotham City, and Gotham City, so it worked. One of the big things, I don't know if Glenn's ever talked about this before, but when we built the Batmobile, the first version of the Batmobile was so big that when we put it on the roads that were built in Gotham City, it couldn't turn, and we discovered that so we were like, okay, great. So we have a Batmobile that can't make a U-turn, that every time he's in a chase, he's going to have to make a 3-point turn. That's not going to work. So, so those are all the things you have to take into consideration that you don't have to do in 2D. The other thing is the lighting. You can do amazing things with lighting in CGI. You can really show black. You can really show, if you see the pilot, the first episode, there's those shots where the guy's firing at Batman and he disappears into the darkness and pops up again. That's really hard to do in 2D, but you can do it really great in 3D. What you don't realize is when you design a character in a shiny black suit and you have real lighting coming down on him, that character will appear black under some lights, but if you walk, say, under a neon green light or a pink light, he turns pink or he turns green. And when we aired the pilot for the network the first time, that was the big comment was from the executives was like, why Batman, his costume keeps changing. And so we were like, oh yeah, okay, great. So then you have to go back and you have to figure out, all right, we're going to have to manipulate the lighting in these certain places and not make it as reflective. And all of these things you never have to think about in 2D. And that's what makes it really, really hard.
Yeah, but I think I'd be a fan of color-changing Batman costumes. Maybe we can make that happen.
Trust me, we have footage of it happening. Yeah, well, you know what? Blog about it or put it up there online, and maybe they'll let us. No, probably not. Probably not.
So one cool thing about this series, too, is you get new villains that we really haven't seen before. Who are you? Was there anybody you just totally nerded out over getting to bring into the series?
Yeah, there's a couple. And I don't think I can talk about one of them because he comes later on. Mag I was a big fan of Pig and Toad from the Grant Morrison comic book, so that was great to be able to bring those guys in. One of my favorite comic characters was a character that I wasn't that familiar with until I started working on the show, which was Magpie. And I like her simply because psychologically we were able to do a lot with her. Humpty Dumpty is another character, actually, which became a big favorite of ours because we didn't realize when we chose him and developed his backstory, and then I can say Humpty Dumpty because we're showing that episode today. He became, and the voice actor, whose name I'm sorry escapes me, but you know him, he plays Badger on Breaking Bad. He's great. And he brought this weird quality to the character of like, yes, he's totally, Humpty Dumpty's completely insane, but he's sweet in a weird, creepy way. So because of that, the episode became really weird and creepy, and that character became really popular, so we brought him back again. Bye, Glenn. What do you... Anyway, so Humpty actually became a big favorite of ours simply because we were like, oh, this guy's nuts. He's nuts, but I feel sorry for him in a weird way. So that's always fun. And Magpie for the same reasons.
Very cool. And so this Batman also feels like he gets to be more of a detective. Like he's younger, very precise. So what was it like to get to develop like that sort of Batman?
Great. And fun in different ways for us. One of the fun things that starts showing up in the episodes as it goes along is we wanted to make Batman, the idea behind our version of Batman was that he was this kid who, because he had witnessed his parents being murdered in front of him, it hardwired his brain and messed him up psychologically to the point where he now sees crime like everywhere, and he can't turn his brain off because of it. And at a certain point in his life, he started to lose it. He started to like, I'm going nuts because I can't stop this. And so that was so Batman became his release valve. So the two of them sort of need each other, which is why in the series, you're going to see that he refers to them as two different people. He refers to, when he talks about Batman, he talks about Batman as if he's a different person. And when he talks about Bruce Wayne, when Batman talks about Bruce Wayne, he talks about Bruce Wayne if he's a different person. So he really does consider them two separate people. Although Alfred knows that, obviously he's not. But, so in doing that, we were able to then start playing with other aspects of him. Like you're going to start to notice in the series that he never eats, that he's doing something which we sort of thought we were making up and then found out it's actually true, called body hacking, which is where, if you look online, believe it or not, it is now a thing, which is where all these computer guys are trying to figure out ways to manipulate their food intake so that they can code longer. And basically, Bruce Wayne is doing the exact same thing, except he's doing it so that he can sleep less, and be out there on the street more, and make his brain sharper and all this stuff. So he's always, throughout the series, you're going to see him trying and manipulating what he eats and things to do that. And then the fun part became, too, is because he's so intelligent, we started putting these words that were really, really hard to pronounce in the show because Anthony Ruivovar, who plays Batman, had trouble pronouncing them. So the more bigger words we could find, the more fun we had with Anthony in the recordings. So that was for us mainly, and it drove him insane. But so it was a lot of fun to be able to play with that aspect of Batman because a lot of times, even in some of the Christian Bale stuff, you don't get to see that. You don't get to see how intelligent this guy is, and that in the second episode there's a scene where he basically analyzes Katana while they're sitting at a dinner table. And, he basically analyzes how she talks to Alfred, how she looks at him, and deducts simply from that she has a past relationship with Alfred that he didn't know about, which Alfred didn't want Bruce to know about. And he deducts that simply from, like, watching her body movements, and he goes through this whole thing. And so those are always kind of fun. That's fun stuff to do, and it's stuff that you haven't really seen before either, so...
Well, and that kind of detective work makes you wonder, Sherlock or Batman, who would figure it out first?
I'd like to think Batman would, but they certainly owe a lot to each other. I think Sherlock is a little bit more closed off because he's just the one man, and everybody knows that Sherlock is also a drug addict. So Bruce is not. Bruce respects his body far too much for that. So I think probably Bruce would. But you never know. I think they go pretty good. They go pretty head-to-head on that.
I'd like to see them team up.
It would be great, wouldn't it? That would be awesome. Yeah.
So, quickly, I know Alfred is different as well. He's got some military background. He's kind of helping Bruce train. How did you decide to make their relationship kind of that different dynamic?
We wanted Alfred to be a guy who at one time had probably been a lot like Bruce, and that he would, we everybody was used to the sort of upper crust, stuffy sort of Alfred, and so we said, well, let's not do that. Let's make him. There has been hints that he was in MI6 in the comic books. Let's really just run with that, and so let's make him working class. Let's make him a guy who has a lot more street sense than we would have thought Alfred would have had. Let's make him a dude who, in his day, would have rivaled Bruce Wayne in terms of strength, and now he's getting older again. And the reason we did that was because we wanted Alfred to be a guy who looks at Bruce and goes, obviously you're strong, you're super intelligent, but you don't have the life experience that I've had, and you haven't dealt with the type of people you want to deal with like I have. Alfred has seen, and we're going to find out more about this later, he's seen bad stuff, and it's affected him. And what we find out, and then we also, and that was why Katana came in, because we said, well, let's bring a character in who Alfred has a back history with, who he trusts to take over for him in case he's not around anymore, in case something happens to him. Somebody that he would trust to sort of be with Bruce because he worries about Bruce. And that's why we find out in the second episode that Katana is Alfred's goddaughter, that she's the daughter of Alfred's former partner in MI6 who died. And then we're told one reason why the partner died. We're going to find out something else later on, and that's going to cause conflicts and stuff like that, because Katana grew up with this one belief that was told to her by Alfred, who's sort of like a father figure to her, just like he's a father figure to Bruce. And that was the third reason we did it, was we wanted Alfred to sort of be, these are his children. So Katana's like a child who he raised. He's raised Bruce as well. There's going to be another character that's going to come up that's going to also be in that realm. I can't talk about who that is. And that's going to cause a whole conflict. So by making him this new version of Alfred, it opened the doors to all kinds of stories that we could tell.